Hey guys, tonight we're going to step back, way back in time. Not to the grand castles or the mighty knights, but to the forgotten corners of medieval Europe. Imagine, if you will, the wind howling a mournful tune outside, snow piling up against a flimsy door, and the air inside your tiny, smoke-filled hut being just a whisper above freezing. You're bundled in scratchy, unwashed wool, and your stomach is rumbling a tune that's anything but melodic. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the flickering, smoky light of a struggling fire. There's no thermostat, no hot cocoa, no Netflix. You are, quite frankly, in a situation you probably won't survive. Your cozy blankets and modern amenities. Luxuries beyond comprehension. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Hey, and if you're feeling up to it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always cool to see where you're all listening from. Fanned. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a peasant, not a lord, not a lady, not even a lowly scribe with a warm cowl. You are, for tonight, a simple tiller of the earth, living sometime around the 13th century in a small, damp, perpetually chilly village nestled somewhere in the gray-green heart of northern Europe. The air biting at your exposed skin as you trudge back from the fields isn't just cool. It's an icy, numbing embrace that promises a long, unforgiving night. You pull your worn woolen hood tighter, feeling the coarse fabric abrade your cheek. The setting sun, a pale, watery orb, dips below the horizon, painting the sky in fleeting shades of bruised purple and faded orange before the encroaching darkness swallows everything whole. You know the drill. Another day done, another night. To survive, your home isn't much to look at or to live in, frankly. It's a single-room dwelling, what historians often refer to as a croft or cottage. Humble structures designed for practicality, not comfort. The walls are a mix of wattle and daub, that's woven branches plastered with a sticky concoction of mud, clay, straw, and sometimes even animal dung. Sounds delightful, right? Think of it as an early, very rustic form of insulation. The roof, steep and weighty, is typically thatched with straw or reeds, thick bundles piled high to shed the rain and snow. And it's not just water you're trying to keep out. It's the relentless, bone-chilling cold that seeps into everything, every crack, every fiber of your being. You push open the low, heavy wooden door, more a slab of rough-hewn timber than a finely crafted entrance, and step inside. The immediate sensation is one of profound relief, a slight respite from the biting wind, but not from the chill itself. The air inside is still damp, still cool, but it's stiller, and that stillness, even if it's only a few degrees warmer than outside, feels like a minor victory. The interior is a study in brutal simplicity. There are no separate rooms, no partitioning walls for privacy. This single, dark space is your entire world indoors. It's where you eat, sleep, live, and often where your most prized possessions, your few animals, also reside. The floor beneath your feet is simply packed earth, uneven and cold, often damp. In the summer, it might be a welcome coolness, but in winter, it's a constant drain of warmth from your feet. You try to avoid standing still for too long, always shifting your weight, perhaps doing a little jig that looks suspiciously like you're trying to warm up your toes. And, yes, you are. The light source is minimal. A tiny, unglazed opening might serve as a window, shuttered tight against the elements, or perhaps just a hole in the roof that doubles as a smoke vent. Mostly, it's dark. Your eyes, accustomed to the low light, slowly adjust, but the shadows still dance ominously in the corners, making every creak of the timbers sound like a ghostly whisper. The air hangs heavy with the smells of wood smoke, damp earth, stale breath, and something else, a musky, animal scent that's become so common you barely register it anymore. That's your livestock. Yes, you read that right. Your precious sheep, maybe a calf, perhaps a couple of chickens. Share your living quarters. This isn't just about convenience. It's a shrewd, vital survival strategy. It's those animals breathing, eating, digesting their little living furnaces. Their body heat, a constant 98.6 degrees or so, radiating outwards, adds a crucial, almost imperceptible warmth to the frigid air. It's not much, but when you're teetering on the edge of hypothermia, every degree counts. Plus, who needs a pet rock when you have a pet goat? Just kidding, ... Mostly, this practice of sharing your home with animals, right, known as birdwelling in some historical contexts, was incredibly common across Northern Europe. It wasn't just for warmth, though that was a major benefit. It also protected your valuable livestock from thieves and predators, keeping them safe during the vulnerable night hours. Imagine trying to explain that to your modern city dwelling friends. Oh yeah, just got home. Fido, the dog, and Bessie, the cow, are sharing my living room. Bessie snores a bit, but her body heat is divine. They'd probably think you've lost your mind, or at least your sense of smell. But for you, the medieval peasant, it's just another Tuesday night. The sleeping arrangements are, predictably, communal. There are no separate bedrooms, no individual beds. You and your entire family, parents, siblings, perhaps an elderly grandparent or younger relative, all huddled together. Sometimes a raised platform made of rough planks, perhaps covered with a layer of straw, serves as a shared bed. More often, you sleep directly on the earth floor, on a thick pallet of straw or dried bracken, which provides a meager insulation against the cold, damp ground. This straw, by the way, needed regular changing, which was a chore in itself. Otherwise, it became a delightful breeding ground for fleas, lice, and all sorts of other creepy crawlies. So when you wake up itching, it's not just a bad dream, it's probably your new roommates. The true warmth comes from each other. Piled close, bodies pressed together, you share what little heat you generate. It's an intimate, sometimes uncomfortable, but ultimately life-saving embrace. Yes. Every cough, every restless shift, every snore is felt by all. Privacy is a luxury you cannot even conceive of. But in that shared physical closeness, there's also a deep psychological comfort. You are not alone against the vast, unforgiving cold. You are part of a unit, a small, breathing, huddled mass of humanity defying the elements. This communal sleeping arrangement is a mainstream historical fact, often overlooked in romanticized notions of medieval life, but absolutely central to peasant survival. As you lie there, feeling the slight warmth radiating from your bundled family, you might pull a rough woolen blanket, or perhaps an animal skin over you. These aren't the soft, fluffy duvets of today. These are heavy, scratchy, and often permeated with the smells of the animals they came from. But they are layers, and layers are warmth. You tuck your hands inside your sleeves, trying to preserve every bit of heat. Outside, the wind continues its relentless assault, finding every tiny crack in the wattle and daub, pushing against the thatch. Inside, the fire at the center of the hut is probably just a smoldering ember by now, carefully banked to preserve precious fuel for the morning. Historians still argue whether the extreme proximity to animals led to more frequent illness, or if the overall immunity of peasants was simply higher due to constant exposure. It's a debate for those with warm rooms and endless parchment. Certainly not for you, huddled in your dark, animal-scented home. The main thing for you is that extra little bit of warmth that keeps the shivers at bay, just barely. You try to ignore the persistent dampness that seems to cling to everything, seeping into your very bones. You focus on the slow, rhythmic breathing of your family members, a soft lullaby in the profound darkness. Sleep, when it comes, is a deep, exhausted oblivion. It's a brief escape from the constant struggle against the cold, a fleeting moment of warmth. in a world that offers little comfort, as the sun, or what passes for it, begins to hint at dawn. A pale gray light filters in through the cracks in the door and the smoke hole. You stir, your muscles stiff and aching from the hard earth and the cold, despite the communal warmth. The air is still frigid, a visible mist escaping your lips with each breath, but there's a subtle promise of the day to come. Your first thought, as your eyes reluctantly open, isn't about breakfast or chores, but about the fire. The hearth, the absolute heart of your home, lies at the center of your hut. Usually a simple depression in the earth floor, or perhaps a ring of stones. There's no chimney, no elaborate brickwork pulling smoke away. That's a luxury for the lords in their castles, with their grand halls and multiple fireplaces. For you, the smoke has to find its own way out. And find its way out. It does, but not before it fills your tiny dwelling. You sit up, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and immediately notice the familiar, acrid smell of wood smoke, heavy and pervasive. It clings to everything. Your clothes, your hair, the very fabric of the hut. It stings your eyes, making them water, and scratches at your throat, eliciting a dry cough. This isn't some romantic campfire smell. This is constant, low-level pollution, day in and day out, for months on end during the cold season. Every breath you take is a mix of smoky air and the damp, earthy scent of your home. It's no wonder that chronic coughs, wheezing, and respiratory ailments were a common affliction among medieval peasants. Sometimes you wonder if your lungs are slowly turning to soot. Ah, the joys of peasant life, right? To get the fire going again, someone, usually the eldest, begins the laborious process. They'll carefully uncover the banked embers, which have been lovingly preserved overnight under a layer of ash to keep them glowing, ready to reignite with a puff of breath and the addition of tinder. Blowing on embers until they catch flame is a delicate art, a balance of steady breath and patience. Too much, and you scatter the ash. Too little, and the spark dies. Once a small flame begins to dance, you add kindling dry twigs, straw, anything small and flammable. Slowly, painstakingly, you build it up with larger pieces of wood until a proper fire is roaring. It's casting flickering shadows on the packed earth walls. The smoke, now more intense, coils and billows, searching for the smoke hole in the roof, or escaping through the cracks in the thatch and walls, or simply filling the entire room. While the smoke is undeniably an irritant, it also served a purpose beyond just warmth and cooking. The constant presence of smoke acted as a crude form of pest control, deterring insects and rodents. It also helped to preserve the wooden structure of the hut itself, preventing rot, and, incidentally, helping to smoke cure the clothes and everything else inside, giving them that distinctive, permanent campfire aroma. So, if you ever wonder what a medieval peasant smelled like, just imagine a combination of damp earth, unwashed wool, and a very intense bonfire. Not exactly Chanel. No, 5, but certainly memorable. The main thing is the warmth. The immediate, radiating heat from the newly rekindled fire is a profound relief, spreading outwards, chasing away the deepest chill that has set into your bones overnight. You draw closer, hands outstretched, relishing the sensation. This small, precious fire is your lifeline. Firewood is a constant year-round concern. You don't just walk to the store and pick up a bundle of logs. Gathering firewood is a monumental task, often done communally, sometimes requiring permission from your lord to collect from his woods. It involves hours of back-breaking labor, felling small trees, gathering fallen branches, hacking them into manageable lengths, and then hauling them back to the village. Every usable piece of wood, every twig, every scrap is precious. Nothing is wasted. You learn to recognize the best types of wood for burning drier wood, harder wood, wood that will burn slow and long. and you learn the rhythms of the forest, the best times to gather, the places where others haven't already picked clean. It's a constant battle against the elements and against scarcity. You might even laugh a little, a dry, humorless chuckle, thinking about how someone in the future will just push a button for heat. What a ridiculous notion. The hearth isn't just a heat source, it's the kitchen, too. All cooking happens here. A metal cauldron suspended over the flames by a chain from a wooden tripod, or simply resting on stones in the embers, is the primary cooking vessel. Here, your daily pottage or stew, a thick, slow-cooked concoction of whatever grains, vegetables, and scraps you have, bubbles gently. The slow cooking method extracts every last bit of nutrient and flavor from meager ingredients, transforming tough, fibrous roots and dried legumes into a digestible, albeit often bland, meal. You learn patience from watching the pot, knowing that the longer it simmers, the more filling it will be. One quirky tidbit about medieval hearths is that some larger peasant homes, or at least the more affluent ones, which is a very relative term here, might have had a smoke bay, a sort of hooded area, built into the wall above the hearth to try and channel more of the smoke directly out. It wasn't a true chimney, but it was an attempt to mitigate the lung-choking conditions. It's a small detail that shows the constant innovation, however rudimentary, in the face of harsh realities. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of respiratory diseases like tuberculosis was primarily due to genetics, poor nutrition, or the constant inhalation of smoke. A grim combination, but the smoke certainly didn't help. The fire also casts an orange glow, a warmth of light, a flickering heart that defines your evening. As night falls, it's the only illumination. Storytelling, mending, simple crafts all happen in the firelight. It draws the family closer, literally, creating a small, bright island against the vast, cold darkness of the outside world. The flickering shadows dance on the rough walls, turning everyday objects into mysterious shapes, making familiar faces seem ancient and wise. It's a primal comfort, the oldest form of gathering, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, humanity seeks warmth, light, and connection. And sometimes, if you're lucky, a spark will fly and land just perfectly, singeing a hole in your well-worn tunic. Just a little reminder that fire, while essential, is also a dangerous master. You always keep a bucket of water, or at least a pile of sand, nearby, just in case. After all, the last thing you need is your entire home and all your hard-won warmth going up in literal smoke. It's a constant vigilance, another burden on an already heavy load, but one you bear without question because the alternative is simply unthinkable. You wake again, it's the memory of smoke still clinging to your throat. The early morning chill penetrates even the layers of shared body heat, a constant reminder of the world outside. The first order of business after rekindling the fire is to face the day's tasks, and that means getting dressed, or rather, putting on the same clothes you wore yesterday and the day before, and probably the week before that. You see, laundry day isn't a weekly ritual. It's more of an when we absolutely have to, and when there's enough water and warmth to dry anything event, which means rarely in winter. So your clothes are perpetually damp, earthy smelling, and probably host to a thriving ecosystem of microscopic life. Your wardrobe is, to put it mildly, limited. For men and women alike, the basic garment is a tunic or shift. It's usually made of coarse linen for the inner layer, if you're lucky enough to have it, and heavy, undyed wool for the outer layers. Linen, derived from the flax plant, is surprisingly effective as an undergarment because it wicks away moisture, which is crucial for preventing chilling. But the real workhorse is wool. Wool, wool, and more wool. It's warm, durable, and naturally water-resistant due to the lanolin in the fibers. It's also incredibly itchy. You probably spend half your day subtly scratching at your arms or legs, wishing you had something softer. But softness isn't the priority. Survival is. The wool itself comes from your own sheep, or perhaps your lord's flock. Processing it is another year-round chore, particularly for the women of the household. First, the sheep are shorn. Then the raw wool must be cleaned, a messy, smelly business. After that, it's carded or combed to align the fibers. And then, slowly, meticulously, it's spun into yarn using a drop spindle or a simple spinning wheel. This yarn is then woven on a loom into bolts of fabric. This entire process, from sheep to cloth, is incredibly labor-intensive. It's why clothes are so valuable and why you have so few sets. You might have one decent outer tunic and perhaps another, more threadbare one for layering. Imagine having only 2 outfits total for an entire year. And one is always on you. Layering is key, just as it is in modern cold weather gear. You might wear a linen shift, then a woolen tunic, and over that, a heavier woolen cloak or mantle. These cloaks are often just a simple rectangle of heavy fabric pinned at the shoulder with a brooch or tied. It's not stylish, but it traps precious layers of air, providing insulation for your lower body. Men might wear bries, loose-fitting trousers, a bit like modern shorts or bloomers under long hose or leg wraps, again of wool. Women would wear similar leggings or just a long tunic, sometimes belted to keep it close to the body and trap warmth. Fashion, more like functional fashion. One mainstream historical fact about medieval clothing is that bright, vibrant colors were incredibly expensive to produce. Keys were derived from natural sources, plants, insects, minerals, and the processes were complex and often labor-intensive. So, most peasant clothing was undyed in the natural shades of wool, off-white, gray, brown, or black. If there was color, it was likely muted earth tones or blues from woad, so you're not walking around in a rainbow of colors. You're part of the earth, literally blending in with the muted landscape around you. Footwear is another challenge. Your feet are constantly cold and damp. Simple leather shoes, often just soft pieces of hide stitched around your foot, offer minimal protection from the elements. More commonly, you might wear wooden clogs, which lift your feet slightly off the wet ground, but are uncomfortable and clunky. Or perhaps, most simply, your feet are wrapped in strips of cloth, held in place by leather thongs, offering little more than a thin barrier against the mud and snow. Forget waterproof boots. That's a distant dream. When your feet get wet and stay wet, which they often do, the risk of frostbite and chilblains increases dramatically. You know, the dull ache that settles into your toes when they've been cold for too long, a throbbing reminder of the constant fight. And then there's headwear. Losing heat through your head is a real problem, and medieval peasants understood this intuitively. Men would often wear a hood or a coif, a close-fitting cap under their hoods, while women wore various forms of head coverings, from simple linen veils to more elaborate wimples. These weren't just for modesty, they were crucial for retaining body heat, especially during outdoor chores. Imagine going out to collect firewood with your head uncovered. You'd feel the cold biting at your ears almost immediately, a sharp, unpleasant sensation that makes your whole body shiver. A quirky tidbit is that medieval peasants rarely, if ever, wore underwears we understand it. The linen shift or bries were often the closest thing to an inner layer. This meant that the coarser outer garments were directly against the skin, contributing to that persistent itchiness. And yes, lice and fleas were a constant companion. You'll learn to live with them, or rather, to pick them off when you're sitting by the fire in the evening. It's a group activity, almost like a bonding experience, for all the wrong reasons. Historians still argue whether the lack of personal hygiene contributed more to the spread of disease, or whether the population simply developed a stronger natural immunity over generations. It's a chicken or egg question for those who don't have to worry about the actual chickens living in their hovel. You might even tell a little joke as you pull on your scratchy tunic. Something like, "At least my clothes keep me humble and itchy." Or perhaps, "My fashion sense. It's truly timeless." And by timeless, I mean it hasn't changed in centuries or been washed. The humor is dry, born of necessity, a way to lighten the burden of the endless discomfort. You adjust your coarse wool, feeling its familiar weight and scratch, a protective shell against the world. Each layer, each thread, represents hours of labor, a precious resource. Your clothes are not just garments, okay? They are armor against the unforgiving cold, a testament to your endurance. They are lived, worn, patched, and repaired countless times, each mend a story of survival. You step out of the hut, a small, bundled figure against a vast, pale landscape, ready to face another day where warmth is a fleeting luxury, and survival is the only true fashion statement. The cold still gnaws at you, even through your layers of wool. But the morning light brings a different kind of hunger, the gnawing in your stomach. Food, and the lack of it, is a constant worry, especially during the long winter months when fresh provisions are scarce. You can't just pop to the market for a fresh loaf of bread or a quick meal. Everything you eat in winter has been meticulously prepared and preserved during the warmer seasons. Your diet, as a medieval peasant, is overwhelmingly centered on grains: wheat, barley, rye, oats. These are the staples, the very foundation of your existence. They're ground into flour, usually at the Lord's mill, which means paying a fee. It's often a portion of your precious grain to have it processed. This flour isn't fine and white. It's coarse, often gray, and full of bits of bran, and sometimes even grit from the millstones. From this, you make bread, heavy and dense. Sometimes a flat bread baked directly on the hearthstones. Sometimes a round loaf that might last a few days if kept carefully. But mostly, your grains become pottage or porridge. Imagine a thick, bubbling concoction in that cauldron over the fire. This pottage is the ultimate medieval peasant comfort food, if you can call it comfort. It's a slow-cooked stew, a mix of whatever dried or root vegetables you managed to harvest and store: peas, beans, onions, cabbage. To this, you add grains, perhaps some oats or barley, thickening it into a substantial, if somewhat bland, meal. Meat is a rare luxury. If you're lucky, you might have some dried or salted pork from the annual autumn slaughter, or perhaps a scrawny chicken or a rabbit you managed to snare. But these are treats, not daily fare. Fish, if you live near a river or pond, might also be part of the diet, again, often dried or salted. This means your winter meals are generally low in protein and fresh vitamins. Scurvy, anyone? Preservation methods are crude but effective, born of necessity. Salting is paramount. Meat, fish, even some vegetables are heavily salted to draw out moisture and prevent spoilage. You can taste the salt in everything, a metallic temps that never quite leaves your palate. Smoking is another key method, especially for meat. The constant smoke in your hut, which you've already come to resent for your lungs, paradoxically helps cure hanging meat, giving it a distinctive smoky flavor and extending its shelf life. Root cellars, simple pits dug into the earth and lined with straw, are where you store root vegetables like carrots, parsnips, and turnips, protecting them from the frost. Dried fruit, if you were lucky enough to harvest any, might be a rare, sweet treat. A burst of concentrated flavor. A mainstream historical fact is that the average caloric intake for a medieval peasant varied wildly, but was often insufficient for the back-breaking labor they performed. Estimates suggest anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 calories, far less than what a modern laborer would consume. Hey, and much of that energy came from indigestible plant matter. You're constantly hungry, a dull ache that becomes a familiar companion, especially in winter. You learn to live with it, to suppress it, to focus on the small, warm comfort of the pottage. Sometimes, you might try to lighten the mood with a joke about food. My pottage is so thin, it practically floats away. I swear, the only thing thicker is my skull after banging it on the low doorframe. Or, we eat so much dried cabbage, I think my ancestors might sprout leaves. It's a gallows humor, a way of acknowledging the hardship without succumbing to despair. One quirky tidbit about medieval food is the concept of fasting days. The church dictated numerous days of abstinence from meat, often on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, well as during Lent and Advent. For peasants, this wasn't as much of a sacrifice as it sounds, because meat was already a rarity. Fasting simply meant relying even more heavily on grains, vegetables, and, if available, fish. It was almost a financial relief, as you didn't have to contemplate using up your precious meat stores. Historians still argue whether medieval diets, despite their perceived simplicity, are more nutritionally complete than modern diets due to the absence of processed foods, or if chronic deficiencies were simply normalized. You, however, are just hoping the pottage pot isn't empty, the warmth from the fire, the meager comfort of your clothing, and the communal closeness are all fighting an uphill battle against the biting winter air and the constant demands on your body. But there's another insidious enemy that preys on the medieval peasant, especially in winter: disease, exacerbated by the primitive, almost non-existent hygiene. Let's talk about water. Getting water in winter is a chore in itself. Your village likely has a communal well, or perhaps you rely on a nearby river or stream. When temperatures plummet, these sources freeze over. That means you have to break through ice, a dangerous and exhausting task, to draw water for drinking, cooking, and the rare moments of washing. The water itself isn't purified. It's often contaminated, leading to a constant battle with various stomach ailments. You learn to boil your drinking water, at least, using precious firewood, because a bout of dysentery in winter could be a death sentence. And then there's personal hygiene. The concept of daily bathing, as we know it, simply doesn't exist. Water is too precious, fuel for heating it too scarce, and the idea itself isn't a priority. You might wash your face and hands occasionally, perhaps a thorough scrub of your entire body once a month, or even less frequently, depending on the season and your resources. Your clothes, as we discussed, are rarely washed. This leads to a constant state of grimy skin, matted hair, and body odor that you've long since become accustomed to. And with it comes the persistent itching. Fleas, lice, and other parasites are not merely an annoyance. They can carry diseases. Imagine the sheer physical discomfort of always feeling a little bit dirty, a bit sticky, a bit itchy. It's something we modern humans, with our hot showers and readily available soap, can barely comprehend. The closest you might get to a bath is sitting near the fire, stripping down and giving yourself a quick rub down with a damp cloth, if you have one. It's a far cry from a relaxing soap dutt. Beyond the general discomfort, this lack of hygiene has dire consequences for your health. With poor sanitation, contaminated water, and close living quarters, diseases spread like wildfire. The common cold becomes a severe respiratory infection. A simple cut can turn into a festering, life-threatening wound. And an outbreak of something like influenza or measles can decimate a village. Childhood mortality is horrifyingly high. You learn not to get too attached to every new face. One mainstream historical fact: life expectancy in medieval Europe for a peasant was brutally short, often averaging around 30 to 35 years, with a high percentage of deaths occurring in infancy and childhood. Those who survived childhood, however, might live into their 50s or 60s, a testament to their hardiness. But they did so with chronic ailments, worn-out bodies, again teeth ground down to nubs from a coarse, gritty diet. The cold itself brings its own specific dangers. Frostbite, the freezing of tissue, is a constant threat to your exposed fingers, toes, and ears. You've seen or heard stories of villagers losing digits or even limbs to its insidious creep. Chilblains, painful inflammatory lesions on the skin, are a common, agonizing companion, a constant itch and burn on your hands and feet. The cold exacerbates existing conditions, stiffens old injuries. It makes every movement a painful effort. When illness strikes, your options are grim. There are no doctors in the modern sense, no pharmacies with the miracle cures. You rely on folk remedies, passed down through generations, herbal concoctions, poultices made from whatever grows in the fields, or perhaps some basic bone-setting skills from a village elder. Superstition often mixes with practical remedy. You might pray to saints or amulets to ward off evil spirits, or participate in rituals believed to appease angry deities. Sometimes you simply have to endure, hoping your body's own resilience is enough. And sometimes it isn't. You might even crack a joke about it, though it's a dark one. My greatest invention. A new cure for bad breath. Just stop breathing. Or, with a wry smile, I'm so clean. The dirt on me has its own dirt. It's a way to cope, to acknowledge the grim reality with a touch of fatalism. A quirky tidbit is the belief in humors, the idea that the body was made up of 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow, bile, and black bile. Illness was thought to be an imbalance of these humors, and treatments often involve trying to restore balance through practices like bloodletting or purging. It sounds barbaric to us, but it was the accepted medical science of the day. Historians still argue whether some of these traditional remedies had genuine, albeit limited, therapeutic effects, or if they were largely ineffective placebos, relying more on faith and the body's natural healing capacity. For you, the peasant, it's just another roll of the dice in the constant struggle to survive. You just hope that whatever you've brewed up for your cough actually works and doesn't just make you feel worse. You take another sip of the bitter herbal concoction, wincing at the taste, but forcing it down, because every little bit of hope is worth clinging to, even if it tastes like dirt and desperation. As the gray light of a new day begins to filter into your hut, you stir, stiff and aching as always. It's a chronic cough that has become a permanent companion, rattles in your chest. But this morning, there's a different, more comforting warmth emanating from the corners of your single-room dwelling. It's not just the embers of the hearth you carefully banked last night. It's the living, breathing presence of your animal companions, your livestock. See, your animals aren't just a source of food, wool, or labor. They are integral to your winter survival strategy, serving as de facto living hot water bottles. Inside your hut, sharing your space, you'll find sheep, perhaps a calf, a few chickens, maybe a piglet or 2. These aren't just pets, though you might develop a certain fondness for Bessie, the cow, or your favorite Away. These are assets, valuable commodities, and vital sources of warmth. Their body heat, a steady 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, radiates outwards, adding several crucial degrees to the interior temperature of your home. It's a subtle but significant difference, turning a truly freezing space into merely a very cold one. You might even find yourself leaning against a particularly large sheep, feeling the warmth of its woolly flank seep into your own chilled body. It's an unconventional form of central heating, one that comes with its own unique set of smells, sounds, and challenges. The distinct aroma of straw, manure, and animal fur fills the air, mingling with the ever-present wood smoke. It's a smell that, to a modern nose, would be overwhelming, but to you, it's the smell of life, of survival. The gentle sounds of their breathing, the soft rustling of their straw bedding, the occasional contented lowing of the calf or clucking of a chicken, these are the mundane lullabies of your nights. Sometimes the piglet might let out an unexpected squeal, or a chicken will decide to take flight and flutter clumsily across the room, causing a minor commotion. But mostly they are quiet, providing a constant, if understated, contribution to your comfort. This practice, known as fire dwelling, as mentioned before, isn't just about warmth, it's also about protection. Your animals are too valuable to leave outside to the mercy of predators or thieves. A wolf pack could easily decimate an unprotected flock, and desperate villagers or wandering bandits wouldn't hesitate to steal a valuable pig or calf. So, bringing them inside is a defensive measure, ensuring your most vital assets are safe and sound, literally under your roof. It's a pragmatic decision born of scarcity and danger, a mainstream historical fact. For many northern European peasant families, the animals were housed in a separate but attached section of the dwelling, often called a byre, sharing a common roof and sometimes a common wall with the human living space. This allowed for the transfer of heat while maintaining a slight separation. However, in poorer or smaller dwellings, or during particularly harsh winters, the animals would be brought directly into the main living area, blurring the lines entirely between human and animal accommodations. Sometimes you might crack a wry joke about your animal housemates. My sheep are my best friends. They don't talk back. They provide wool, and they're always warm, better than some human neighbors, frankly. Or, my family sleeps so soundly, you'd think we were cows, given how much we moo in our sleep. The humor, as always, is a coping mechanism beyond direct body heat. Animals offer other, less direct benefits. The manure, while initially indoors, would eventually be collected and used to fertilize your meager fields in spring. A vital component of the agricultural cycle. Chickens provide eggs, albeit fewer in winter when daylight hours are short. And of course, the promise of meat and milk, however distant or limited, reminds you of their ultimate value. One quirky tidbit: some medieval texts mention remedies for cold hands and feet that involved warming them on the belly of a sleeping animal. It sounds rather odd, but it makes perfect sense in a world devoid of heated blankets or hot water bottles. Just imagine trying to convince your pet cat to be your foot warmer. Historians still argue whether the constant close proximity to livestock contributed to a higher incidence of zoonotic diseases. Diseases passed from animals to humans among medieval peasants, or if their relative isolation and simpler lifestyles kept other diseases at bay compared to crowded urban centers. It's a question for those who haven't spent a freezing night huddled next to a sleeping pig. For you, the immediate benefit of shared warmth far outweighs the long-term, unseen risks. You value these creatures for their tangible contributions to your survival. Their presence, a soft, comforting hum in the deep silence of a freezing night. They are part of the family, part of the ecosystem of your humble home, living proof that every bit of life generates heat, and every bit of heat is a blessing. The fire is burning steadily, casting its comforting glow, and the animals are settled, their warmth a constant, reassuring hum. But the cold doesn't just demand warmth. It demands constant effort, constant work. Winter, while seemingly a dormant time for the land, is anything but for the peasant. There are always chores, always repairs, always tasks to ensure survival. And these often involve the entire community. Inside the hut, there's the never-ending work of mending. Your clothes, patched countless times, always seem to develop new rips and tears from the constant wear and tear of daily life. The women of the household, often by the flickering firelight, spend hours mending, spinning new yarn, or weaving small pieces of fabric. Every scrap of cloth is precious, too valuable to discard. Needles might be made of bone or iron, thread from spun flax or wool. It's slow, painstaking work, often done with numb fingers. The light isn't great, so you lean close to the flames, risking singeing your hair just to see the tiny stitches. Tools also need constant maintenance. Simple farming implements, your wooden plowshares, your sickles, your axes are essential for your livelihood. In winter, when the ground is frozen, you take the opportunity to sharpen blades, repair handles, and clean rust. This might involve a trip to the village smithy. It's a communal resource where the village blacksmith, a skilled artisan, works his magic with hammer and anvil. His forge is another source of welcome heat in the village, a beacon in the cold. Men often gather there, sharing news and gossip while waiting for repairs. A brief respite from the solitude of their own homes. Beyond your immediate household, winter often brings communal tasks. Clearing snow from paths, repairing a damaged well, or mending a communal fence. These are jobs for the entire village. You work together, a team against the elements. There's a practical reason for this. Many hands make light work, but there's also a powerful social aspect. Shared labor reinforces community bonds, fostering a sense of mutual reliance. You depend on your neighbors, and they depend on you. It's an unspoken contract of survival. One mainstream historical fact about medieval communal life is the importance of the village church. It wasn't just a place of worship. It was often the largest, warmest, and most structurally sound building in the village. In winter, it served as a gathering place, a social hub. People would attend mass, of course, but also gathered before or after fornews, gossip, and perhaps a moment to simply be out of their cramped, smoky homes. Sometimes, the church might even serve as a temporary shelter during extreme weather, though usually only for the very desperate. It was, in many ways, the village's communal living room. You might even try a little joke as you join your neighbors for a communal task. My hands are so cold, I think they've joined the village choir. They're constantly chattering. Or, if you work any harder, the snow will melt from sheer embarrassment. It's a way to keep spirits up, to remind yourselves that you're all in this together. One quirky tidbit: the medieval winter truce or peace of God often meant a temporary cessation of hostilities between warring lords during the coldest months, partly due to the difficulty of campaigning in snow and ice, but also because even the nobles recognized the need for peasants to focus on basic survival. It didn't always hold, of course, but it was a hopeful idea. Historians still argue whether the strong communal bonds in medieval villages were primarily a result of shared economic necessity or a deeper cultural emphasis on collective identity. For you, the peasant, it's just how things are. You couldn't imagine surviving without the helping hands of your neighbors. The shared tasks bring people together, creating a web of interconnectedness that is as vital as the warmth of the fire. You help mend a neighbor's roof, and they help. You clear a blocked path. There's no money changing hands for these favors. It's an unspoken agreement, a social credit system based on reciprocity and necessity. When a new hut needs to be built or an old one repaired, the entire village pitches in for a house raising, bringing whatever tools and skills they possess. After the work is done, there might be a small, simple feast, a moment of shared celebration and camaraderie before the cold again forces everyone back into their separate, yet connected, lives. The slow, steady rhythm of shared labor is a powerful antidote to the isolation that the harsh winter can bring. It reminds you that you are part of something larger, a resilient network of families working together to defy the unforgiving elements. It's exhausting, often repetitive, but it's how things get done. How the village endures another season, how life continues against all odds. As you pound a loose peg back into a fence post, your breath pluming in the cold air, you feel the solidarity of your community, a warmth that transcends the physical chill. It's a quiet strength, the bedrock of peasant survival. The physical hardships are immense, but the medieval peasant endures not only the cold, the hunger, and the constant toil, but also the profound psychological toll of winter. The days are short, impossibly short, casting long, mournful shadows across the perpetually gray landscape. The nights, conversely, stretch on an eternity of darkness, broken only by the meager flicker of your hearth fire. There's no electricity, no streetlights, no glowing screens to distract you. Just darkness, profound and absolute. For what feels like endless hours, this relentless darkness, combined with the forced inactivity of the land, can lead to a kind of seasonal melancholy. Boredom is a constant companion, especially for those who can't participate in the more active chores. You're confined to your small, smoke-filled hut for much of the day and all of the night. There's only so much mending, so much staring into the flames, so much listening to the sounds of your family breathing. The world outside is a hostile, frozen landscape, dangerous to traverse. Isolation, even when surrounded by your family, can creep in, a quiet, insidious weight on your spirit. Yet, despite this, there's an incredible resilience within you. You learn to find comfort and even joy in the smallest things. Storytelling becomes an essential part of the long evenings. Oral traditions are rich and varied, full of tales of brave knights, cunning beasts, mischievous fairies, and moral lessons from the lives of saints. You listen intently, perhaps huddled closer to the fire as an elder spins a yarn, their voice a low, soothing drone against the crackle of the flames. These stories are not just entertainment, for education, history, and a vital connection to a shared cultural heritage. They transport you, however briefly, beyond the confines of your smoky hut to worlds of adventure and wonder. Simple games are played, perhaps a game of dice, if someone is lucky enough to own a set, or riddles posed and answered, stimulating minds dulled by routine. Songs are sung, hymns and folk tunes, their melodies weaving through the thick air, bringing a sense of warmth and community that even the deepest chill cannot extinguish. Laughter, too, is a powerful antidote, a release valve for the tension and hardship. You laugh at the absurdities of your daily life, at the clumsy piglet, at a neighbor's silly mistake, at your own enduring plight. One mainstream historical fact: despite the hardships, communal festivities, particularly around religious holidays, like Christmas and Twelfth Night, offered vital psychological breaks during winter. These periods, though often short, involved feasting, however meager, singing and storytelling, providing much-needed psychological relief and a sense of shared human warmth against the cold. You might even offer a little joke about the darkness. My eyes have adapted so well, I can practically see in Technicolor, as long as Technicolor means shades of gray. Or, the only thing brighter than my future is the moon on a cloudy night. Again, the humor is dry, a coping mechanism. The psychological aspects of survival extend to your outlook on life. There's a blend of hope and fatalism. Q, for a good harvest next year, for the health of your family, for an end to the cold. Q, but you also accept that much of your life is beyond your control. The weather, disease, the whims of your Lord. These are forces you cannot command. Its acceptance isn't resignation. It's a pragmatic understanding of your place in the world. It frees you from the burden of worrying about what cannot be changed, allowing you to focus on what can. A quirky tidbit: the medieval concept of time was often less precise than ours. Time was marked by church bells, the rising and setting of the sun, and the changing seasons, rather than minutes and hours. This more fluid sense of time might have made the long winter nights feel less like an empty void and more like a natural, if challenging, part of the annual cycle. Historians still argue whether the collective suffering of medieval peasants led to greater spiritual devotion and a stronger sense of communal identity, or if it fostered a quiet resentment towards their circumstances. For you, the peasant, it's just about getting through the night, one breath at a time, one story at a time, until the promise of dawn. You dream of spring, of the sun on your face, of green shoots pushing through the earth. And that dream, that faint glimmer of hope, is often what carries you through the darkest, coldest hours. You let the voices of the stories, the simple melodies, and the gentle laughter lull you, knowing that even in this harsh world, moments of human connection offer a warmth that even the bitterest winds cannot extinguish. The dawn arrives, heralded not by an alarm clock, but by the subtle shift in the gray light and the stirrings of your animal companions. You pull yourself up, your muscles stiff, and prepare for another day of unending chores. Today, the wind feels even sharper, carrying a promise of something worse. The thought of venturing outside, beyond the immediate shelter of the village, fills you with a primal dread. Winter travel, for a medieval peasant, isn't a scenic holiday. It's a desperate gamble against the elements, often necessary for survival, yet fraught with peril. Imagine needing to take your grain to the Lord's mill, perhaps a few miles away, or journeying to a larger market town for a rare commodity like salt or iron. These journeys, already arduous in fair weather, become life-threatening. Expeditions in winter. The roads, if you can even call them that, are not paved. They are muddy tracks, churned into impassable quagmires by rain and thaw, or frozen solid, slick with ice and hidden pitfalls. Snowfall can obliterate them entirely, turning familiar paths into an indistinguishable white wilderness. You rely on your ingrained knowledge of the land, on faint deer tracks or the memory of ancient trees to guide you. Every step is a deliberate, cautious act. The weather itself is a malevolent force. Blizzards can descend quickly, trapping travelers, burying paths under feet of snow, and plunging visibility to zero. The biting wind, unimpeded by trees and open fields, can strip away your body heat at an alarming rate, bringing on hypothermia with frightening speed. You know the sensation, the initial shivering, then the strange calm, the numbness, the irresistible urge to sleep, which could be the last sleep you ever take. You've heard stories, grim, cautionary tales, of travelers found frozen solid, sometimes just a few yards from the safety of their village. And then there are the other dangers. The medieval wilderness is not a benign place. Wolves, driven by hunger in the lean winter months, are a very real threat. They hunt in packs, their gaunt forms a terrifying sight against the snow, while they usually prefer easier prey alone. Struggling traveler could become their target, and humans can be just as dangerous. Bands of outlaws, desperate and ruthless, often prey on travelers, stripping them of their meager possessions, or worse. The thought of encountering either fills you with a cold dread that has nothing to do with the temperature. A mainstream historical fact, medieval travel was slow, dangerous, and expensive, even for the wealthy. For peasants, it was usually undertaken only out of dire necessity to pay feudal dues, attend a required court session, or acquire essential goods not available in the village. Most peasants rarely ventured more than a few miles from their birthplaces in their entire lives. You might even try to crack a joke about the dangers of travel. I tried to hitchhike, but the wolf didn't have any spare seats. My last journey was so cold, I think my shadow froze to the ground and decided to stay. The humor is grim, reflecting the genuine peril. One quirky tidbit about medieval travel is the concept of wayfarers' crosses, or pilgrims' crosses, found along ancient routes. These simple stone crosses served as landmarks, guidance for travelers, in times of poor visibility, in places of prayer for a safe journey. They were a small, hopeful gesture against the vast, indifferent wilderness. Historians still argue whether the limited mobility of medieval peasants contributed to stronger local identities and unique regional customs, or if it primarily fostered isolation and suspicion of outsiders. For you, the peasant, it means relying on the familiar, on the knowledge of your own patch of land, and approaching any journey beyond it with extreme caution and a silent prayer. When you do have to travel, you prepare meticulously. You bundle up even more layers of wool, pull your hood tightly around your face, and perhaps tie strips of cloth around your wooden clogs to try and keep the snow out. You might carry a sturdy staff for balance on icy paths and to ward off smaller animals. You might pack a small, dense piece of bread, perhaps a bit of dried meat, for sustenance. Every decision is weighed against the risk. It's the need for that extra bag of grain, or that trip to the miller, worth risking life and limb. Often the answer is yes, because the alternative is simply starvation for your family as you step out of the relative shelter of your hut and begin your journey. The wind immediately assaults you, biting at your exposed skin even through the layers. The snow crunches under your crude footwear, and the world is a monochrome landscape of white and gray. You keep your head down, focusing on each difficult step, your breath pluming in the frigid air. You move with a grim determination, relying on instinct and the sheer will to survive. The journey is not just physical, it's a test of your mental fortitude, a constant battle against the elements and the creeping fear that one wrong step could mean the end. But you press on, because that's what peasants do. You endure the dangers of the outside world, the gnawing hunger, the pervasive cold. These are constant companions, too, but you're not entirely helpless. You possess knowledge, passed down through generations, and you have access to a surprising array of simple tools, often crafted by hand or by the village smith. These aren't just conveniences. They are extensions of your will, essential for turning the raw materials of the earth into the means of your survival. Consider the axe. It's not just a tool for felling trees. It's used to split firewood, to shape timbers for repairs, to clear brush. Its heavy, sharp head and sturdy wooden handle are familiar in your hands. You keep it sharp, honing the edge with a whetstone, knowing that a dull axe means wasted energy and greater danger. The saw, though perhaps less common and more difficult to acquire, is also invaluable for more precise cuts. These tools are the foundation of your ability to gather fuel, to build and repair your shelter, to craft other necessary items. Then there are your farming implements. The hoe, a simple wooden handle with a broad iron blade, is used to break up soil and remove weeds. The sickle, a curved blade with a short handle, is crucial for harvesting grain, a painstaking task performed by hand, stalk by stalk. The flail, two pieces of wood joined by a thong, is used for threshing, separating the grain from the chaff after harvest. These tools, though seemingly basic, represent millennia of agricultural innovation, allowing you to coax sustenance from the stubborn earth. Each of them requires skill and constant care. Broken hoe in the spring could mean a reduced harvest, and that could mean starvation in the winter. So, maintenance in the cold months, when the fields are dormant, is critical. One mainstream historical fact is that iron, while known and used, was a relatively valuable and scarce commodity for peasants. Most tools would have been predominantly wooden, perhaps with small iron fittings or blades. Only the wealthier peasants or communal tools, like a village plow, would have more substantial iron components. This scarcity meant that every piece of metal was cherished, repaired, and recycled until it was utterly useless. You might even offer a little joke about your tools. My shovel is so old, it remembers when dirt was just mud with aspirations. Or, my axe is sharper than my wit. Which isn't saying much, but it's still useful for chopping wood. The humor is practical, reflecting the utility of the objects. The craft skills involved in making and maintaining these tools are often communal. The blacksmith, as mentioned before, is an indispensable member of the village, turning raw iron into vital implements. but many smaller repairs or creations are done by you. You learn to carve wood, to mend leather, to repair woven baskets. These skills are taught from a young age, passed down from parent to child, forming a repository of practical knowledge that is as important as any physical tool. A quirky tidbit is the use of bone as a material for tools. Before iron became more widely available, or for those who couldn't afford it, peasants would fashion needles, awls, and even small knives from animal bones. These were surprisingly effective for many tasks, a testament to resourcefulness and ingenuity in the face of scarcity. Historians still argue whether the slow pace of technological innovation in the medieval period was due to a lack of scientific understanding, the rigidity of social structures, or simply the immense practical challenges of disseminating knowledge and resources. For you, the peasant, the tools you possess are simply the ones that work, the ones that allow you to survive another day, and that's all that matters. Beyond the agricultural tools, there are also the implements for survival in the wilderness. Simple snares and traps are laid for small game rabbits, birds providing a rare but welcome supplement to your diet. Your hunting instincts, though perhaps not as developed as a true hunter, are honed by necessity. You've learned to read tracks in the snow, to listen for the subtle sounds of movement in the brush, to understand the habits of the local wildlife. These skills are often shared within the family, especially between fathers and sons, forming another layer of protection against starvation. As you sharpen your sickle by the firelight, the metallic scrape a familiar sound, you feel a quiet satisfaction. These simple objects, crafted from the earth, sharpened by your hands, are your partners in survival. They represent agency, the ability to shape your world, however minimally, to bend it to your will. They are a constant reminder that even in the face of immense hardship, you are not entirely powerless. You have the tools, and you have the will to use them. The rhythmic scrape of the sharpening stone on the sickle blade is a calming sound, a familiar comfort in the gloom of your hut. As the night deepens and the fire dwindles to embers, your thoughts turn to sleep. But medieval peasant sleep is a world away from your modern notions of cozy beds and uninterrupted rest. It's a pragmatic, communal affair, dictated by the relentless demands of survival. There are no separate bedrooms, no individual beds. As we briefly touched on before, your entire family, parents, children, perhaps an elderly relative, all share the single room and often the same sleeping space. This might be a large communal bed platform, a simple wooden frame covered with a thick layer of straw, or simply pallets laid out directly on the packed earth floor. The straw is your mattress. It's readily available, provides some insulation against the cold, damp ground, and offers a surprising amount of cushioning for a night or two. However, it compacts quickly, becomes damp, and is a perfect habitat for fleas and lice. So, the straw needs to be changed regularly, ideally every few weeks. But in the dead of winter, when fresh, dry straw is scarce, you make do with what you have. Imagine the rustling and crackling as everyone settles down like a nest of tired, itchy birds. Your pillows, if you have any, are likely sacks stuffed with straw, or perhaps just a block of wood. Comfort is secondary to warmth and utility. For coverings, you pull rough woolen blankets over you, or perhaps animal skins, heavy and coarse, but excellent at trapping body heat. These aren't just for warmth, it's also a source of scratchiness and persistent smell. You'll learn to pull them up over your head, creating a small, breathing microclimate within the folds, trying to escape the biting cold that permeates the hut. Privacy, as you've probably guessed, is non-existent. Every cough, every sigh, every movement of a family member is heard, felt, and shared. There are no quiet moments alone, no chance to retreat into your own space. This constant proximity can be stifling, but it's also, paradoxically, a source of comfort. In the vast, indifferent darkness of a medieval night, the warm, breathing presence of your family provides a powerful reassurance. You're not alone against the elements. You're a huddled, living mass, sharing heat, sharing the burden of survival. One mainstream historical fact about medieval sleeping habits is that many people, even some wealthier ones, did not sleep continuously for 8 hours, as we often do today. Instead, they practiced biphasic sleep, splitting their night into 2 segments: a first sleep from dusk until midnight or so, followed by a period of wakefulness for an hour or 2 known as the watch, and then a second sleep until dawn. During the watch, people might tend the fire, pray, or even socialize quietly. This was particularly practical in the long winter nights. You might even crack a quiet joke as you try to get comfortable. "My bed is so lumpy, it feels like I'm sleeping on a bag of angry turnips." Or, "My favorite sleeping position, the one where I'm not freezing." The humor is quiet, almost whispered, so as not to disturb the others. The positions you adopt for sleep are often designed to maximize warmth. You might curl into a tight ball or spoon with family members, pressing bodies together to create a shared envelope of warmth. Your feet, often the coldest part of your body, might be tucked under someone else's legs. Oh, you might try to warm them by pressing them against an animal if they're sleeping nearby. The deep sleep that eventually comes is often a sleep of utter exhaustion, a profound unconsciousness born of a day of relentless physical labor and constant cold. It's a heavy, dreamless slumber. A merciful escape, a quirky tidbit. Some medieval medical texts suggested that sleeping with your head elevated on a pillow could improve digestion, though peasant pillows were more about practicality than ergonomic design. It's a small detail that shows the nascent attempts at understanding the human body, even without scientific methods. Historians still argue whether the lack of personal space in medieval peasant homes led to higher levels of conflict within families, or if the bonds of necessity simply outweighed interpersonal frictions. For you, it's just how life is, how you've always lived, and how your ancestors lived before you. As you drift off, the rustling of straw becomes a soft murmur, the distant sounds of the winter night fade, and the shared warmth of your family becomes the only reality. You are tucked away, cocooned in a small, fragile bubble of humanity against the vast, indifferent cold. Sleep is not just rest. Indeed, it's a form of active survival, a regeneration of your strength for the ceaseless struggle of tomorrow. You breathe in the familiar smells of smoke and damp earth, feeling the weight of the rough blankets, and surrender to the embrace of sleep, hoping it lasts long enough to truly rejuvenate your worn-out body for the new day's demands. As you wake from your deep, exhausted slumber, the first sensation is the lingering cold, a familiar ache in your bones. You rub your eyes, the smell of wood smoke and unwashed wool, a constant presence. The battle for survival isn't just about food and warmth. It's about understanding the invisible forces at play in your world, forces that can bring sickness, misfortune, or even death. For the medieval peasant, this often means delving into a world of superstition, deeply held beliefs, and folk medicine. A blend of ancient wisdom and fervent faith. Your world is steeped in beliefs that seem fantastical to modern minds. Spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, are thought to inhabit the woods, the rivers, and even your own home. You might leave out a small offering of bread or milk for the good folk, the fairies or house spirits, hoping they will bless your household, or at least not cause mischief. Charms and amulets, perhaps a small piece of iron or a particular herb, are worn or hung above the doorway to ward off the evil eye, or malevolent spirits that could bring illness or blight your crops. These aren't mere quaint customs, they are an active part of your defense against an unpredictable and often hostile world. The church plays a pivotal role in your life, offering solace and a framework for understanding the universe. You pray to saints for protection, for good harvests, for an end to the cold. Relics, or even just images of saints, are venerated, believed to possess miraculous powers. The local priest, often barely more educated than you, but with the weight of the church behind him, offers spiritual guidance, performs rituals, and reminds you that your hardships on earth are but a test for the rewards of the afterlife. Faith, however grim the present, offers a powerful form of psychological resilience. It's a hope that transcends the immediate suffering. When illness strikes, and it strikes often, you turn to folk medicine. It's a repository of knowledge passed down through generations. The village's wise woman or cunning folk are often the first and only resort. They possess knowledge of local herbs, their properties, and how to prepare them. For a persistent cough, you might be given a concoction of brewed thyme and honey. For a fever, a poultice of willow bark might be applied to your forehead. Bone setting, midwifery, and rudimentary wound care are all part of their repertoire. These are practical skills, developed through centuries of trial and error, a blend of observation and traditional belief. One mainstream historical fact: the understanding of disease in the medieval period was largely based on the theory of the for humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness was seen as an imbalance of these humors, and treatments often focused on restoring that balance through methods like bloodletting, purging, or specific dietary recommendations. While often ineffective by modern standards, these practices were deeply ingrained and widely accepted. You might even offer a little joke about the remedies. My wise woman gave me a potion for my cold. It tastes like dirt, but at least I'm not craving more dirt, which is a start. Or, I swear, if I rub one more turnip on my sore ankle, I'm going to sprout roots. The humor is a quiet defiance, a way to acknowledge the absurdity of some of the treatments. A quirky tidbit is the use of trepanning, drilling a hole in the skull for various ailments, particularly mental ones like madness or epilepsy. This was believed to release evil spirits or restore the balance of humors. While incredibly dangerous, archaeological evidence shows it was practiced in various forms for millennia. Historians still argue whether the widespread belief in magic and supernatural forces among medieval peasants provided a necessary framework for coping with an unpredictable world, or if it simply hindered the development of more rational, scientific thought. For you, the peasant, it's just about doing whatever you can to survive, to ward off misfortune, and to find some measure of comfort in a world where answers are rarely clear. As you tend to a neighbor's sick child, carefully applying a poultice of crushed herbs to their feverish brow, you feel the weight of this accumulated knowledge. It's a blend of hope and fear, of desperate measures and quiet faith. You whisper a prayer as you work, knowing that ultimately it is a leap of faith into the unknown. The effectiveness of the remedy is often less important than the act of doing something, fighting back against the unseen forces that threaten your existence. This blend of the spiritual and the practical, the supernatural and the natural, is woven into the very fabric of your daily life. A constant reminder that survival is not just about physical endurance, but also about the resilience of the human spirit. The winter days drag on an endless cycle of cold and chores, but the peasant's life isn't lived month to month. It's lived season to season in a rhythm dictated by the earth and the sun. And for every bitter winter, there is a preceding period of intense, back-breaking work. The preparation for winter. Baptiza. This isn't a single task, but a year-round communal effort. A race against time to gather and store enough resources to endure the leanest, coldest months. The moment the last snow melts and the ground thaws, your attention turns to the fields. The entire spring and summer are dedicated to cultivating the land, planting, weeding, tending to crops. These are continuous tasks. Your entire livelihood hinges on the success of the harvest. If the spring is too wet or the summer too dry, it can mean a meager yield, and that spells disaster for the winter ahead. So, every sunny day, every gentle rain is watched with anxious hope, knowing that what you sow now determines whether you eat or starve. Come January, harvest time, typically in late summer and early autumn, is an absolute frenzy of activity. Men, women, and children alike work from dawn till dusk, sometimes even into the twilight, racing against the approaching cold and the possibility of early frosts. The grain, wheat, barley, rye, oats, is cut by hand with sickles, gathered into bundles, and then threshed to separate the valuable kernels. Vegetables, like cabbages, onions, carrots, and turnips, are pulled from the earth. Every single berry, every nut, every edible root is gathered from the wild. It's an exhausting, relentless period, but also one filled with a sense of urgent purpose. You can practically feel the clock ticking, knowing that every bushel of grain, every basket of roots, is a bulwark against the coming desolation. One crucial part of winter preparation, often overlooked, is the collection of fodder for your animals, your precious livestock, which provide warmth, manure, and ultimately food. Also need to eat during the winter when grazing is impossible. So, hay and other dried grasses are painstakingly cut and stacked, often in tall, conical hair ricks, protected from the rain and snow. This requires extensive labor, and a bad hay harvest can be as devastating as a bad grain harvest, leading to the early slaughter of animals you can't feed, reducing your future food and warmth sources. One mainstream historical fact: the medieval open field system was a common agricultural practice where village lands were divided into large, unenclosed fields, which were then subdivided into narrow strips cultivated by individual peasant families. This system, while fostering communal cooperation, also meant that crop rotation and land management were often determined by community consensus rather than individual initiative. You might try a joke as you toil in the fields. My back is so sore from harvesting. I think I'm slowly becoming one with the earth, just hopefully not 6 feet under it. Or, I'm not sure what's heavier, this sack of grain or my fear of winter. The humor is a quiet acknowledgement of the immense effort involved, beyond food and fodder. There's the constant need for firewood. This isn't just an autumn task. Firewood is collected year-round. Fallen branches are gathered during spring. Small trees are felled in summer, and larger logs are split and stacked to dry. Green wood burns poorly and smokes excessively, so it's essential to have a supply of well-seasoned wood. This means you need a year's supply of wood already drying while you're collecting for the next year. It's an endless cycle, a deep storage problem that defines your landscape with piles of carefully stacked timber before the first frosts set in. Attention turns to the hut itself. Any repairs to the wattle and daub walls are made. Thatch roofs are inspected for leaks and reinforced, and doors are checked for drafts. Every effort is made to make the dwelling as airtight as possible, a small fortress against the brutal winds. It's a collective effort, often with neighbors helping neighbors, 'cause a strong hut, for one, benefits the whole community by keeping everyone healthier. A quirky tidbit: during autumn, quote, before the deepest cold set in, medieval peasants would often undertake the annual pig killing or slaughtering, turning some of their livestock into winter provisions. This was a messy, communal event, providing fresh meat for a short period, and then a great deal of work salting, smoking, and preserving the rest of the carcass. It was a time of both sorrow for the animal and gratitude for the food it provided. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasants' reliance on subsistence farming fostered a deeper connection to the land and natural cycles, or if it simply locked them into a perpetual cycle of poverty and vulnerability. For you, the peasant, it means everything. Your ability to survive the winter is directly tied to the sweat you pour into the earth, the wood you stack, and the food you preserve. It is a race against time, a constant effort to store enough life and warmth to last until the earth yields its bounty once more. And as the days grow shorter and the air turns crisp, you look around your village at the bulging hayricks and the packed root cellars and offer a silent, anxious prayer that it will be enough. The crisp, biting air and the ever-present chill are democratic in their reach, affecting everyone. But their impact is profoundly shaped by one crucial factor: social stratification. While you, the peasant, struggle daily with survival, the medieval lord in his stone castle experiences winter in an entirely different dimension. It's a stark contrast, a chasm between two worlds, highlighting the immense disparities of the age. Imagine a lord's castle. Thick stone walls, often many feet thick, provide superior insulation against the cold compared to your wattle and daub hut. While still drafty by modern standards, these walls retain heat much more effectively. They have multiple fireplaces, some grand and enormous, capable of burning vast quantities of firewood, creating roaring blazes that heat large halls and chambers. Chimneys, a luxury you can only dream of, efficiently draw smoke away, leaving the air inside relatively clear, not choking with soot. The lord sleeps in a proper bed, often with a mattress stuffed with feathers or wool, not straw, and covered with multiple layers of fine woolen blankets and furs. His chambers might even have tapestries on the walls, not just for decoration, but to add an extra layer of insulation against the stone. Their diet is a world apart. While you subsist on pottage and coarse bread, the lord enjoys a lavish array of meats: venison from his hunts, roasted fowl, salted beef, and pork. He has access to finer grains for white bread and imported spices to flavor his food, a stark contrast to your bland, gritty fare. Wine and ale flow freely, not just water or weak, home-brewed small beer. His pantry is stocked with provisions from his domain, from the tithes he extracts from your labor, ensuring a consistent and varied diet, even in the depths of winter. They don't face the gnawing hunger that is your constant companion. Their clothing, too, speaks of wealth and comfort. Fine wool, often dyed in rich, vibrant colors, luxurious furs, and silk, if they are very wealthy, are commonplace. Multiple changes of clothing, allowing for a degree of cleanliness and warmth unimaginable to you. Their shoes are better made, often of fine leather, offering superior protection. While still uncomfortable by modern standards, they are a world away from your rough clogs and cloth wrappings. One mainstream historical fact illustrating this disparity: medieval sumptuary laws often dictated what materials and colors people of different social classes were allowed to wear. This wasn't just about fashion. It was a visible marker of status, designed to reinforce the social hierarchy, can prevent peasants or lower classes from aspiring to the appearance of their superiors. You might even crack a joke, though it's a bitter one, about the lord's life. My lord's biggest winter worry is which vintage of wine to open. My biggest worry is if I'll have dinner. Or, I hear the lord has a new fur cloak. I bet it's softer than my entire house. The humor is tinged with the quiet resentment of inequality. The burden of winter labor falls disproportionately on you, while the lord might enjoy hunting or supervising. You are the one who actually produces the food, gathers the fuel, maintains the infrastructure that allows his lifestyle. You chop the wood that heats his castle. You tend the fields that grow his grain. You herd the animals that provide his meat. You owe him labor service, often during the crucial harvest or planting seasons, even as your own family struggles. While some lords might practice a form of charity, offering alms or small portions of food to the truly destitute during lean times. This was often sporadic and driven by religious obligation rather than a systematic safety net. It was rarely enough to alleviate true suffering. The peasants, as we've seen, rely far more on communal self-help and mutual aid within their own village than on the generosity of their overlords. A Quirky tidbit: some medieval castles had garderobes, essentially primitive toilets that emptied directly into the moat or a cesspit below. While still unhygienic by modern standards, they were a significant improvement over the peasants' reliance on outdoor pits or simply the nearest patch of ground, demonstrating another level of convenience and privacy unavailable to the lower classes. Historians still argue whether the vast wealth disparity in medieval society was primarily due to the inherent injustices of the feudal system, or if it was simply an inevitable outcome of the limited economic productivity of the time. For you, the peasant, it means a cold, hard life defined by endless toil and perpetual scarcity, while the Lord enjoys comfort born of your labor as you trudge through the snow. Perhaps carrying a load of firewood you've gathered, you might catch a glimpse of the Lord's castle looming on a distant hill, its stone walls seemingly impervious to the biting wind. A wisp of smoke rises from one of its grand chimneys, a visual testament to its warmth. You shiver, not just from the cold, but from the stark realization of your place in this world. It's a harsh truth that while winter affects all, its cruelest hand is reserved for those who have the least. But it's also a powerful motivator. Your survival is your own victory, a testament to your endurance, forged not in luxury, but in a crucible of ceaseless hardship. You lower your head and continue your laborious trek, the warmth of the castle, a distant, unattainable dream. Your own meager hut and the shared warmth of your family, a more immediate and tangible reality. The contrast between your life and that of the Lord hangs heavy in the frigid air, a stark reminder of the social order. But regardless of your station, the cycle of seasons remains relentless. And for you, the peasant, your existence is fundamentally intertwined with this cycle. Winter is not just a season, it's a test, a period of profound challenge, but also a time of quiet endurance and deep reliance on the lessons of the past. You have endured the biting cold, the gnawing hunger, the constant threat of illness. You have survived by huddling with your family and animals, sharing every precious bit of body heat. You have relied on the crude warmth of a smoke-filled hearth, sacrificing comfort for survival. Your clothes, patched and scratchy, have been your armor. Your food, though bland and monotonous, has provided the calories to fuel your endless labor. You faced the dangers of travel and the isolation of long nights, bolstered by stories and the quiet strength of your community. And as the days slowly, almost imperceptibly, begin to lengthen, a faint hope begins to stir within you. It's the anticipation of spring, of the thaw, of the earth awakening once more. This hope isn't a naive optimism, it's a profound understanding of the cyclical nature of life. Winter, however harsh, is not forever. It is a period of rest for the land, a time for the soil to regain its strength. And for you, a time to gather your own, to mend, to prepare, to simply endure. The small joys become amplified in this landscape of scarcity. Particularly warm day, a successful hunt bringing a rare taste of fresh meat, a new skill learned, story well told around the fire. These moments are cherished anchors in the vast sea of hardship. Laughter, however infrequent, rings true and clear. The bonds of family and community, forged in shared suffering, become unbreakable. These are the unsung victories of peasant life. One mainstream historical fact about the medieval period is the concept of fallow fields. To maintain soil fertility, one of the 3 large open fields in a village would often be left unplanted for an entire year to rest. A practice that ensured long-term productivity, but also meant less land was producing food at any given time. This was a testament to the long-term thinking ingrained in peasant agriculture. Despite the immediate pressures, you might even crack one last gentle joke. Spring's almost here, which means soon I can finally take off my second layer of frostbite and get back to work. Or, I'm so excited for spring, I might even bathe. Well, maybe just my feet. Okay. It's a weary humor, but still there. A quirky tidbit. The medieval period saw the slow, gradual adoption of innovations like the heavy plow and the horse collar, which significantly increased agricultural productivity over time, while not universally available or quickly adopted. These technologies eventually eased some of the immense physical burdens on peasants, little by little. Historians still argue whether the resilience of the medieval peasant was primarily a product of their deep-seated religious faith or an inherent human adaptability to extreme environmental pressures. For you, the peasant, it's simply what you do. You adapt. You endure. You survive. As the gray light outside gradually transforms into a softer, brighter hue, you know that the deepest cold is beginning to release its grip. The birds will soon return, the ice on the river will crack and flow, and the earth will begin to soften, ready for the plow. This cycle, this perpetual dance between cold and warmth, scarcity and abundance, is your life. You are a small part of a vast, unchanging rhythm, and in that understanding, there is a profound sense of belonging, a quiet strength that has been passed down through countless generations. Now, as the long journey through the medieval winter draws to a close, and the faint, hopeful whisper of spring begins to touch the air, I feel the lingering warmth of your own bed, the gentle hum of your modern world. Let your breath soften, sinking deeper into the comfort of your surroundings. The harsh realities of the peasant's struggle, the biting cold, the constant hunger, the ever-present smoke, they begin to recede, fading like a distant memory. The faint scent of wood smoke, the rough scratch of wool, the soft rustle of straws. Sensations, once so vivid, now gently dissipate into the quiet stillness of your room. You are safe, you are warm, and the darkness outside is no longer a threat, but a soft, embracing blanket. Let your thoughts drift, light and unburdened, as the sounds of my voice become a gentle, receding hum. Rest easy, knowing that for tonight, the fight against the cold is over, and you are truly, deeply, and utterly at peace. Good night.